Yes, everyone, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. It is Jack here, and Spurs have been heating up with those Dominic Solanke rumors, so I've decided to come up with some swap deal options that we could potentially give to Bournemouth because it looks like that we're not willing to pay upwards of £65 million straight up for the striker, but we are willing to offer some players in return as a swap deal to make the price at least a bit cheaper for us. I think there are some realistic ones that Spurs could be offering to Iraola's side, and so I've come up with 2 to 3 players here in the Spurs squad that are kind of on the fringe of it, or at least likely to still be leaving this summer, that they could offer in return to make this Dominic Solanke deal a bit cheaper. If you can for me, everybody, give me your options. If you are a fan of this Dominic Solanke rumor and this potential transfer this summer, give me your players that you think could be offered in a swap deal. And also, if you can for me, smash that like button. One of the potential swap deal options for Spurs to make this Dominic Solanke trade a bit cheaper for themselves could be offering up someone like an Oliver Skipp. His contract expires in 2027. He's valued around 15 million euros, and I think he could offer good competition for someone like Lewis Cook, who didn't really have much direct competition that I can remember from last season for Iraola's system in that kind of deep lying playmaker type role. And speaking of that word, deep lying playmaker, I think that's an area where Skipp could improve on. I'm not too sure if his passing range has always been the best for a club like Spurs, and I don't think is really good enough at the moment to really be that realistic of a deep lying number 6 for Ange Postecoglou. But if he were to go to a club like Bournemouth, you think he could pick up a thing or two from Lewis Cook, who has a lot of experience playing in that deep lying playmaker and defensive midfield role, and also he could pick up a thing or two from Iraola, who I believe was kind of a deep lying playmaker, defensive type player himself in the midfield. So you think that this could be a good move for Skipp to eventually replace someone like Lewis Cook, but then also work on that side of his game that I don't think he's necessarily had all the opportunities to improve on and necessarily just hasn't exactly improved on over the time that he's been here. What's important to note is that Skipp does occupy one of those very important club academy trained homegrown spots, and you feel like you have to then replace him with somebody directly from the academy in order to make up the numbers. But I do think we have some options. We have Tyrese Hall, who's a direct replacement. He can take up that defensive midfield role. He could also just learn from other players like Basuma as well as Archie Gray, in that number 6 position, and technically can even play as a box to box number 8. So I think there's a direct replacement there when it comes to the club academy trained homegrown spots. And also, we know that Mikey Moore as well as Jamie Donnelly should be being promoted this upcoming season, and they should be given minutes. So they technically would add, further homegrown academy trained spots there for Ange Postecoglou's 25-man squad. And then another option, just quickly, would be Alfie Dorrington, who's only just coming back from surgery as well as an injury, and will need time, I think, to develop, and will need time to come back to full fitness. And he could technically take up one of those club academy trained homegrown spots that Skipp would leave behind. If you were to think of an alternative to someone like Oliver Skipp as one of these English homegrown academy trained spots to give to a club like Bournemouth, you could also look at Alfie Devine, who I think has impressed a lot in this preseason, but doesn't seem, or at least appear to be, a part of Ange Postecoglou's plans at the moment. And he could provide good competition for someone like Alex Scott, who played pretty well for them this last season and likely will be given more minutes. Also, someone like a Ryan Christie, who's taken up one of those number 10 creative midfield roles. So either an Alfie Devine or Oliver Skipp, I think, would be a good option for Spurs if they were to think of swap deal potential with Dominic Solanke to make the deal a bit cheaper for themselves. Another potentially more likely option than Oliver Skipp that Spurs could be offering up in this swap deal to make Dominic Solanke's transfer a bit cheaper for themselves would be Giovani Lelo. His contract is up in 2025, so we've been needing to get rid of him for at least the last summer or two, and there's not really much money, I think, left to get out of someone like a Giovani Lelo. I don't even think we could get rid of him for more than 10 to 15 million euros. So at this point, you might think about using him in a swap deal. We need to get rid of non-homegrown positions anyway, and Lo Celso does occupy one of them, and he's not exactly really in Ange Postecoglou's plans. At least that's what it appears to me from the outside. And he still is a good player in plenty of Spurs fans' eyes, and so then you'd hope he might still be a good player in someone like Iraola's eyes, another Spanish midfielder, who could then use him as competition for someone like we mentioned earlier, Ryan Christie, or an Alex Scott, Amrabat or even like a Philip Billing, who technically hasn't even been used very much in Iraola's system, or it didn't seem to be favored that much by Iraola. And if they're looking to get rid of a Philip Billing, perhaps they could then replace him with someone like a Giovani Lelo, who is good in those possession-based systems and can work hard for a manager if he's up for it. And I just don't think that Ange really wants him any longer. So he could be used as a player that we're going to use in a swap deal because he is supposed to be a good player, but just doesn't really have much value left considering his contract and also because he hasn't really been used by Ange Postecoglou and other managers for a while now. So that's another alternative if we are to try to make this Dominic Solanke deal a little bit cheaper for ourselves. My final option in terms of a swap deal for Dominic Solanke to make the deal a bit cheaper for Spurs would be Sergio Reguilon, whose contract is up in 2025. According to Transfermarkt, he's only worth around 12 million euros, so it's not like we're going to get much money out of him if we were just sell him outright on his own. And I think he could be good backup for someone like Milos Kerkez, the Hungarian international, since they already got rid of Lloyd Kelly, who was the other left back alternative to Kerkez. And Kerkez picked up a big injury that last season, so you feel like Sergio Reguilon would be a very similar, like-minded left back. He's attacking. He knows how to put crosses into the box, knows how to get up and down like Kerkez as well. Still has, I think, a tiny bit of pace to his game, to Sergio Reguilon. So I wonder if he's more of a direct competition for Kerkez, whereas Lloyd Kelly was used as both a left-sided center back as well as also a left back as a more of a defensive option. Maybe Uraiola might still want that instead of Kerkez, but if you want something sort of more similar to Kerkez, I actually think Reguilon would be good competition for him. He's a great crosser of a ball, which I think is useful to lower level sides like at Bournemouth. And if you also look back at some of the stats from last season, Bournemouth did have some of the most crosses of any Premier League team this last year. So someone like Sergio Reguilon, whose crossing ability I truly rate, would be pretty useful to someone like Iraola. And at one point or another during his time at Sevilla, Sergio Reguilon was a very highly rated left back, especially you would think amongst probably plenty of people who watched La Liga with that team. And I wonder if Iraola still has some sort of soft spot or some sort of likening to someone like a Sergio Reguilon and could see him as good competition and good backup to a Milos Kerkez. And it would be a good opportunity for Sergio Reguilon to still stay in England if that's where he would like to continue his career. So this kind of makes sense on a lot of fronts again for Spurs as well as for Bournemouth. But there you are, everybody. Those are my three options that Spurs could realistically use as a swap deal to make this Dominic Solanke deal a bit cheaper for themselves. Let me know if there are any players that I missed out on. Let me know if you disagree with any of the options that I put forward. And also, if you can for me, smash that like button, get into those comments below, and we'll see you tomorrow, or I think today, since this video is going to be coming out on Tuesday, for the fan show later in the day. So all of you fan show members would love to see you there later tonight. And also, we'd like to see some debuts because we've been given a lot of new fan show memberships by Rob Wallace as well as David Shire. So anybody that's been thinking about coming on for some time now, we would love to see you and see you make your debut. But I'll be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs. In the big Ange we trust. We never stop. See everyone.